So you remember our theme, Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan. What's next? Bhagavat Shravan. Mathura Vasa, Srimati Shradaya Seva. These 5 limbs, angas of bhakti, are, as we said previously, difficult to understand with our material intelligence. You may think that these 5 activities are just tradition or just some religious rituals, but that is a great mistake. So remember, bhakti is not about belief. If I ask you, sometimes I do this, how many of you believe in Krishna? Raise your hand. And what do I say to that? So what? Because bhakti is not about belief. It is about your engagement of your senses, your mind, and your body in authorized spiritual activities. And by your doing that, a transformation is produced in your consciousness. In fact, your whole body can become spiritualized. You know the example. The iron rod is not fire, but if it's inserted in fire and kept there, it can act like fire. So our bodies are not spiritual, but by engaging them in Krishna's service, our bodies have the potential to become spiritualized. That is why someone who is fully engaged in devotional service is not considered to be a resident of the material world, even though they have a material body and they're in the material world. Their whole existence has become spiritualized by engagement, full engagement in devotional service. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mapcha yoga vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For one who is fully engaged 24/7 in Krishna's service, the modes of material nature cannot bind, cannot affect such a person, such a devotee. We talked about Sadhu Sangha and how we should search for inspiring association while respecting anyone who vibrates the name Krishna. But what do you do when you find inspiring association? You want to hear about Krishna and talk about Krishna. That's your response to the inspiration. By your wanting to talk about Krishna, hear about Krishna, discuss Krishna's service, you properly take advantage of the Sadhu Sangha. So Sadhu Sangha is an interactive, it's not just a one-way street. And it's your responsibility to make sure the street is a two-way street. And then you're properly participating in Sadhu Sangha. So what shall we discuss further today? Exaggeration. This is a point that Srila Prabhupada raises in chapter 13 of Nectar Devotion. Knowing our mentality. That we hear about these stunning one-off occurrences of persons becoming extraordinarily advanced just by doing one bhakti activity one time. The 4 Kumaras, they smelled the incense in the temple and became totally transformed. So we might think, can that really be true? Doesn't happen to anyone I know. But these descriptions, although not possible for them to happen to everyone, do happen to some. So you would say, well, then why mention it? Just like Bilva Mangala Thakur. How many of you know the story of Bilva Mangala Thakur? Yes. He was fallen. Although born in a Brahmana family, he was fallen. So much so that he was associating with a night worker. And he would go through hell and high water to be with the night worker, even though he was born in a Brahmin family with a nice Brahmini wife. He had this attachment for this night worker. And once he, through a horrible storm, cyclone, went at night to meet her. Raging storm. He had to cross a flooded river, and he thought, let me grab onto this log, and that will bring me to the other side. The log turned out to be a dead body. He didn't care. He had his goal in mind. He got to the house of the night worker, whose name was Chintamani. And the gate was locked. The house was surrounded by a big wall with a gate, and the gate was locked. And no one would open the gate. So he decided, let me hold on to some vines and climb over the wall. He did that, but the vines turned out to be a snake. He didn't care. He was so determined. And so then, once inside the courtyard, and he gained access, the night worker Chintamani was shocked to see him. How could you come out at during such a cyclone, during such a natural disturbance, storm? You still determined to be with me? And she looked at him and said, you know, if only you were so determined to attain Krishna, your life would be successful. And a bell rang in Bilva Mangala Thakur's head. Krishna, if only I was so determined as I am to be with this night worker, if only I was so determined to be with Krishna, my life would be successful. So he immediately took off for Vrindavan. And there in Vrindavan, he had the darshan of Krishna. So we hear things like that and wonder, well, what about me? Why are these accounts, these histories there, cited in Nectar of Devotion, when it's not happening to any of us? But these histories, these incidents, are necessary for showing us the peak potential of bhakti. And by hearing these incidents, our attention is dragged away from the material world. So still you may say, our attention is dragged away, yes, but still these things won't happen to us. They don't happen to us. Like for Nama Kirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, the incident is given that someone just heard once the vibration of the strings and Narada Muni's Veena and lost all attraction for material existence. So again, you're thinking, well, that would be so wonderful to happen to me. But it's not. It's not happening to anyone I know. So therefore, why are these incidents mentioned? But they're showing you, these incidents are showing you what is possible at the peak potential of bhakti. But if you can just get one drop of that ocean of peak potential, how fortunate your life is. And we're going to discuss Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in terms of getting one drop of that mercy. For those of you who are reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, there it's stated that it's not possible to describe the length and breadth of the bhakti ocean. But if you just get one drop of that ocean, that one drop can drown the whole universe. So we have to put things into perspective. Yes, nectar devotion describes the peak potential of the bhakti activities. But if you can just get a drop of that peak potential, your whole life is wonderful. So please understand that point. Another aspect that we should be clear about is the relation between bhakti activities and our regular occupational and social duties, which are still, the remnants are still present in India and Indian culture today in terms of marriage, in terms of social obligations, in terms of your occupational responsibilities. So is that bhakti? Or is that leading to bhakti? Let us be clear. No. The panchangas, the 5 limbs, are beyond the material realm. Social duties, occupational duties, can make you settled, make you peaceful, so that then you can appreciate bhakti. But bhakti is its own cause. I think some of you have heard the so-called mantra, work is worship, duty is God. How many know that mantra? Sometimes, even in Vrindavan, when there are some rallies, people are marching in the streets, they're chanting like that. Work is worship, duty is God. What do you think? Does anybody who's working, they're worshiping. And anyone who is doing whatever they call their duty, that's God. This is a leftover understanding from Varnashrama Dharma, in which, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, someone performing their occupational duty properly can attain perfection, because that occupational duty and social duty settles them and keeps them stable, so that one day they can peacefully hear about bhakti. But bhakti is its own cause and its own result. So I don't think that anyone here is marching in the streets chanting, work is worship, duty is God. But there may be traces of such notions in your consciousness. I hear it often. Swamiji, right now, we cannot engage in Krishna service. We must do our duty. Have any of you heard that one? Yeah. I'm working. I'm an honest working man. Swamiji, you know what Lord Krishna says? Work is worship. What other excuses can be there? Swamiji, bhakti, devotional service, is for when you're in your 70s and 80s. But when you are younger, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that's the time for making money. And then in the last days of your life, then Jai Shri Krishna. What do you think? So this notion that work is worship, duty is God, may not be present so vividly, but subtly it can be there. Let me immerse myself in my occupational duties, my family responsibilities. That will lead to bhakti. No, only bhakti leads to bhakti. That means contact with a devotee brings about bhakti. So this is an important point to understand so that we can better appreciate the panchanga, the 5 limbs of devotional service. And the descriptions of what can happen, extraordinary events that can happen to someone who some or other engages in devotional service. These are not exaggerations. It can happen. So why should we deny that? It's not happening to us. But just like a mundane example, who here is going to the university? Anyone? 1. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. You are working hard to get your degree, yes? You're studying, very attentive about exams, yes? Yes. This Mataji, she wants to be a chartered accountant, is that it? Yes. So, but it is a fact, though, that some persons get honorary degrees, right? It happens. So you don't deny that, but you don't expect one, do you? But it does happen. So similarly, in Nectar Devotion, you see that sudden transformations, like the Bilba Mangala Thakur. He just heard these words from this night worker, Chindamani. All he heard was her say, if you would only be so attached to Krishna as you are to my temporary material body, your life would be successful. Dum. Off he went to Vrindavan. Later, he wrote a prayer glorifying this night worker as his Vartma Pradarshika Guru, the Guru who first showed him the path. So these events can happen, just like someone can get an honorary degree from the university. But practically every student will not expect an honorary degree. We've discussed briefly Murti Seva and the importance of having home deities, even though there's so little time in our daily life available. But just chanting in front of your home altar, and doesn't have to be brass forms of the deities, you can have a picture there. Just chanting in that way, in a sacred space in your own home. And I hope you have a sacred space in your home. Is so effective. So that's why, as we said this morning, Srila Prabhupada is talking not about mandir worship, but about home puja. So we talked about Murti Seva, we talked about Nama Kirtan, we talked about Sadhu Sangha, and Bhagavat Shravan, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Is that all 5? Oh, Mathura Vasa. Yes. Going to a holy place associated with Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. You feel the difference as soon as you arrive in the place. Even a non-devotee can feel the difference. But we talked about how there's no geographic restriction to Vrindavan consciousness. Lord Chaitanya himself demonstrates this. Moramana Vrindavan. His mind is Vrindavan because he's always thinking of the pastimes of Krishna. So there's no geographic restriction to Vrindavan. Still, that physical tract of land is very special. And even a non-devotee who visits there can feel something. Even just by your remembering the holy Dham, Vrindavan, Navadvip, Jagannath Puri, just by remembering you feel different. What to speak of by being there? Some of you can remember your first visit to the Dham. Yes. How was it? What do you remember? Huh?
It was Jagannath Puri.
Yes.
I saw so my first visit in Kham was in Jagannath Puri, and I remember Lord Jagannath Prasadam. And no, the Prasadam is Mahaprasadam from the Lord each day.
So you cannot forget that first taste of Jagannath Prasad.
It was very special, and they didn't allow me to come inside temple because I'm a white body, and it's not allowed to white people enter the temple. And
you have to look like you were born in a Hindu family. But there's a way.
I just felt the mercy of Sri Prabhupada.
I waited until Rath Yatra, when the Rath Yatra carts in Puri would spend the night, would be parked at the Gundicha Mandir. And so, right at dawn, myself, Holiness Radhanath Swami, and some other devotees, we had an arrangement with the pandas that at dawn they would allow us to climb up the cart and approach Lord Jagannath and put our head at his lotus feet. So we did that. And I remember one of the guards, as we climbed up the cart and got to the platform, he looked at us, he looked at Radhanath Swami and me and said, "Iskon." And we just looked like, What does that mean? So we just kept walking. We didn't say anything. Then there was a European devotee with us, and they stopped him. And he pulled out 5,000 rupees, gave it to the guard, and he was through. So then we got to put our head at the lotus feet of Jagannath. The Pujari put our heads at Lord Jagannath's lotus feet. So my point is that everyone can remember something extraordinary that happens during your visit to Vrindavan, Mayapur, Navadvip, Jagannath Puri. And so you can appreciate how living in the Dham, visiting the Dham is one of the Panchangas, the 5 limbs. But then we talked about how being absorbed in Mandir Seva, even here in North Sydney, is a special situation. And your Krishna consciousness can be such that you can realize you're in Vrindavan because you're always thinking, how can Krishna be satisfied? That is Vrindavan, that attitude. So I wanted to impart to you a feeling of personalism, because this whole presentation by Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion, which I hope you will all read. Those of you who are not studying Bhakti Shastri have not read it, probably. But everything is personal in Bhakti. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees. So, we spoke about the correlation, the connectivity between Lord Chaitanya and Rupa Goswami. And if we have time, we'll discuss about Sanatana Goswami, because Rupa and Sanatana would collaborate. So how did Rupa Goswami get all that knowledge of bhakti? It came directly from Lord Chaitanya, who spoke to him for 10 days straight at Prayag. So let's go to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is Madhya Lila chapter 19, text 1. Broken. Oh, now I'm told. All right. I'll have to read it to you, which means you have to pay special attention. Vrindavaniyam rasakeli vartam kalena luptam nijashaktim ukha sanchaya rupe vyatanot punasa prabhur vijal pradiva loka trishtim. Please listen carefully. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. So everyone knows about that from beginning of Bhagavatam, second canto, or even first canto, first verse. Tene Brahma Hida Yad Adi Kavaye. Describing how Lord Brahma, who is Adi Kavi, the original intellectual of the universe, was inspired through his heart with Vedic knowledge. So this verse is referencing that, but in relation to Rupa Goswami. We'll continue to read. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So you have the example of Lord Brahma, and now you have the example of Rupa Goswami, both in the same way being taught through the heart. And just hear the situation. The Vrindavan pastimes were almost lost to the world's knowledge. Remember in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains, Sakalinaha Mahata Yoganashta Parantapaha. I spoke this knowledge previously to the chief executive of the sun planet, but in the course of time, the knowledge has become lost. He didn't mean that the verses or the texts become lost. He meant the clear meaning, the proper understanding had become lost. And so therefore Krishna re-energized the parampara. Krishna did that himself. Similarly, we have a situation a little more than 500 years ago where knowledge and awareness of Krishna's pastimes, his Vrindavan pastimes, had disappeared. So Krishna himself, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is reviving the emphasis on Krishna Lila. As we heard, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. So this is the Rupa Goswami who originated the knowledge you have in Nectar of Devotion, which is Srila Prabhupada's summary study of Rupa Goswami's work, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's very personal, isn't it? By this activity, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. It happens in the material world. Things disappear. Whether the actual meaning of Bhagavad Gita, so Krishna had to re-speak it, or knowledge of Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, almost lost to memory. So Rupa Goswami gets the credit for revitalizing, reviving Vrindavan Leela in the consciousness of the world. And that's why we are known as Rupa Nugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. Any questions about that? It's a very personal reality. And here you have Lord Chaitanya revealing to Rupa Goswami Krishna's intimate pastimes. Yes.
Can I just ask a question from the previous session?
Well, I was looking for questions right now. There'll be a time at the end. Okay, save it, please. I was wanting to focus on this personal relationship between Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself, and Rupa Goswami. So you can see where your knowledge, where this bhakti process is coming from. It's not anything invented by me or Srila Prabhupada or any recent person. Just as Krishna's Leelas, his pastimes are eternal, similarly, knowledge of Krishna's pastimes is eternal. But sometimes the situation can appear that the knowledge has become lost. And at that time, Krishna does something about it personally. So I would like to emphasize this so that you feel indebted. So that you feel that you are the recipients, the receivers of such mercy because of Srila Rupa Goswami being instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself.
Gurudev, you mentioned the Bhagavad Gita verse Sakalaneha Mahato, that this knowledge gets lost due to time. And that although bhakti and its knowledge and Krishna's pastimes are eternal, they look or appear to be lost. But at the same time, the Lord is anxious to revive them. Is this, on one side, there's something inside me saying, well, is this a fault of the devotees who didn't spread it enough? But we can't say that because they're pure and they're full.
It's the fault of the material world, which we are so attached to.
So does that mean the material energy is over?
Seems to, just like clouds seem to cover the sun, but the sun is always shining above the clouds. Seems that way. Krishna is showing you how powerful the illusory energy is. The knowledge almost becomes lost. But Krishna always does something about it. Yada yada hidharmasya ganya bhavati. Okay? This is personalism. This is why you should feel personally indebted. So Rupa Goswami revived the Vrindavan pastimes, meaning people had almost forgot about them. But Rupa Goswami has given us the knowledge in Nectar of Devotion, which Srila Prabhupada has presented.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I want to ask about the cause of bhakti, because you are explaining how bhakti is not caused by our adherence to social rules or duty. So could you explain a little bit more about the cause?
The cause is bhakti itself, and that means contact with a devotee. Properly following your varnashramic occupational and social duties can make the ground fertile, but it doesn't automatically translate into the seed of bhakti sprouting. It's kind of like this. It's not a one-to-one relationship, causal. Okay, I've done my social duties, I've done my occupational duties so nicely. That is bhakti. No, but it could be so that you're doing your duties nicely, gives you a pious life, a goodly life, and in other words, makes the ground fertile, so that when you do meet a devotee and can get the seed of bhakti, the bhakti lata bij, the experience is fruitful. But no, there is no one-to-one correlation between your occupational and social duties and the seed of bhakti. So I bring that up because many people think that just by doing my family duties, my work duties, that is worship. That is all that needs to be done. Vishnu is satisfied by that. Brahma, Durga, Shiva, whoever. You're all satisfied. Take your pick. But that is not the case. So yes, thank you for asking that question, because the answer needs to be emphasized. Even though we laugh when we hear about the pseudo mantra, work is worship, duty is God, there are traces in our consciousness of that. Yes, Kamsari Sena. Both Sena brothers are here. Srikanta Sena and Kamsari Sena.
Guru Maharaj, just going back to the point you were mentioning about how we were Rupa Nugas. We read in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, there are extensive teachings that Lord Chaitanya has given to Srila Sanatana Goswami as well. So the question is, why are we specifically known as Rupa Nugas, that followers of Rupa Goswami?
Rupa Goswami considered Sanatana Goswami to be his spiritual master. It's just that Rupa Goswami has given the foundational knowledge of what you read in Nectar of Devotion, and also, yes, knowledge of rasa. So that doesn't mean Sanatana Goswami is diminished. But Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Dhamayam Gati Swapadantikam. We pray to Rupa Goswami because he is foundational in terms of, and we'll hear more of this. I'm just about to read more of the personalism between Lord Chaitanya and Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami is credited by Lord Chaitanya himself with actual understanding of Krishna's intimate leelas and Lord Chaitanya's feelings of separation. Lord Chaitanya in the role of Krishna and Radha, particularly in feeling Radharani's separation from Krishna.
Thank you. Thanks.
So we have no projectors. Suddenly it was revived. Is there a miracle? Huh? It's kaput. Okay. All right, you'll have to pay special attention. Maybe this is all mercy, so you have to hear with more concentration. So we're looking at Majlila chapter 19, text 133. And of course, I'm always motivated to inspire you to become attached to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I often point out, and many of you may have heard me say it, the reason why there is such confusion in India about Krishna is because they don't approach Krishna through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And without going through Mahaprabhu in the age of Kali, it's practically impossible to clearly understand Krishna. You've heard it before. Why did he do this in Valor Kukshetra? He cheated Karna. Why did he do this? Why? Who is he dancing with? Who are you dancing with? This Krishna is this. Krishna did that. No understanding. Krishna is the Hindu forest love god. So much confusion because they don't go through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So therefore, I'm always inspired to motivate you to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. How many have read the whole Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 10 out of how many are here? 10 out of 125. But I think many of you have the full set of Chaitanya Charitamrita in your home, yes? But, well, that is the first step. But it's not the culmination. The culmination is to read it.
It's actually quite difficult to comprehend. Maybe we need your guidance. Because you're the expert in it.
Well, I'm speaking something now, hopefully. It'll help you. It'll inspire you to open the books. Okay, text 133. Srila Rupa Goswami has personally spoken about the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his auspicious introduction to his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So before beginning Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which you have as nectar of devotion, Rupa Goswami credits the mercy of Mahaprabhu. What is that introduction? That verse? That auspicious introduction? Listen. Although I am the lowest of men and have no knowledge, the inspiration to write transcendental literatures about devotional service has been mercifully bestowed upon me. Therefore, I am offering my obeisances at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has given me the chance to write these books. So he's truly feeling wretched. I'm the lowest. I have no knowledge, but I'm getting some inspiration bestowed upon me from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He has given me the chance to write these books. So he's personally expressing his indebtedness, his own personal worthlessness, and he's giving all the credit to the inspiration coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So as I explained to you, for 10 days, Rupa Goswami instructed Rupa Goswami. By that instruction, you see, it's not simply do this, do that, this is the way it is, that's the way it is. Through those words, Mahaprabhu is empowering Rupa Goswami with the necessary potency to describe and enhance upon what Lord Chaitanya is speaking. So this is how the parampara works. This is how the chain of succession works. There's empowerment. Yes, there's the handing down of information, but there's also accompanying that information is the potency to understand it and to convey it to others. I want to emphasize this so that you can appreciate the personalism, because we're so impersonal. So Prabhupada wants you to know in the purport that unless one is specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he cannot spread the Krishna consciousness movement. An empowered devotee sees and feels himself to be the lowest of men, for he knows that whatever he does is due to the inspiration given by the Lord in the heart. So there you're having an example of what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satayuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti. Krishna says, for those who are constantly engaged in my service with priti, with love, I personally give them the intelligence how to come to me, how to serve me. This is the epitome, the utmost personalism. And that's how the ultimate reality works. Krishna is pleased by his devotee and empowers his devotee. An interesting point about Rupa Goswami, especially when we consider the casteism that has caused so much confusion in India. You know, the concoction of Brahmana by birth. Rupa Goswami was a Brahmana by birth, but his days before manifesting as a Krishna Bhakta were as an associate of Muslims. So we hear that. The material position of a devotee doesn't matter, because devotional service is not dependent on material considerations. In his earlier life, Srila Rupa Goswami was a government officer and a grihasta. He was not even a brahmachari or sannyasi. He associated with mlechas and yavanas, but because he was always eager to serve, he was a qualified recipient for the Lord's mercy. A sincere devotee can therefore be empowered by the Lord regardless of his situation. So you all understand the illusion of Brahmana by birth. You know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Guna karma vibhagasha. You're classified in your occupation, your varna, by your qualities and activities. Just like Srikanta Sain is a lawyer. Let's say in the future, he and his wife have a son. Does that mean the son is automatically a lawyer? My father is Srikanta Sain. He's a lawyer, so automatically I'm a lawyer. No, you'll never sign him up. You'll never take him on. What's your qualification? Never mind your father. What about you? Well, simply my father is a lawyer. That's my qualification. So this concoction, as I've said many times, has caused such havoc in India. How many of you, in order to try and get a good mark on your exams in India, you went to the temple of Saraswati and paid some brahmanas? Raise your hands, be honest. You figure, you never know, it might work, right? All right, how much did you pay? 11 rupees. Good investment, you never know, right? 11 rupees, what the heck? And the so-called Brahmana was very happy to take your 11 rupees. So this is the kind of confusion that has caused havoc in India. But now you're hearing that Rupa Goswami was associated with the total non-Vedic persons, with Muslims, meat eaters, and yet he became a qualified recipient for Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So we continue. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "My dear Rupa, please listen to me. It is not possible to describe devotional service completely. Therefore, I'm just trying to give you a synopsis of the symptoms of devotional service." So what Lord Chaitanya is giving Rupa Goswami is just a summary. And he's asking Rupa Goswami, expand upon these kernels, these nuggets that I'm giving you. Because it's not possible for a complete description. Why is that? He explains in the next verse. The ocean of the transcendental mellows of devotional service, the ocean of rasa, is so big that no one can estimate its length and breadth. However, just to help you taste it, I am describing but one drop. But remember that one drop can drown the whole universe. So there's no limit to knowledge of Krishna's pastimes and loving relationships. The Lord Chaitanya himself, who's Krishna, says, it's not possible to describe the full expanse, but one drop. Just to help you taste the whole ocean, I'm giving you just one drop. So quantitatively, in terms of quantity, we can never know as much as Krishna. But if we just get one drop of that ocean, that is more than sufficient. Any questions about this? Microphone, please.
Maharaj, in this, what you told earlier was people are not approaching Krishna via Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but even to approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's such limited knowledge we have. And even if we go in Puranas or Bhagavatam, there's barely mention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation, but there's one verse in Bhagavatam, if you know Bhagavatam, that you would come across or stumble upon it, then you're supposed to follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So why this avatar is such hidden gem?
Lord Chaitanya is known as Chana Avatar, the hidden incarnation, because his mission is confidential. You have things you hold in confidence. Maybe only your wife knows. So why can't Krishna? He's also a person. Why can't he have confidential things? He says in Bhagavad Gita, Raja Vidya, Raja Guya. This is the king of knowledge. This is the king of all secrets. This is part of being a person. You're selective about who you talk to. If some stranger walks up to you on the street and says, "Tell me, how did you feel when you first met your wife?" would you start talking? Okay. It's personal. And that person on the street has no qualification. He hasn't won your trust. He hasn't established any relationship with you. So Lord Chaitanya is on a very confidential mission. Yes, to distribute Harinam Sankirtan, but also to experience what it's like to be a devotee. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, but Krishna notices that his devotees enjoy more than he does. So Krishna says, all right, I'll come as my own devotee to taste what my devotees are tasting. And that way Krishna still remains the supreme enjoyer. So because Mahaprabhu is a person, he's Radha Krishna combined, he has things he holds in confidence, things that are confidential. That's part of being a person. You don't blab your business to everyone. You don't pick out some stranger here. I'd like to tell you how my mother treated me when I was a child. You don't do that. But maybe to your close persons, maybe to your wife, you would say such a thing. So we have to give credit to Krishna for being a person. We're so impersonal. We don't want Krishna to be a person. We have so many personal needs and personal ways of doing things. Why can't Krishna? Our personal needs are reality, but Krishna's personal existence, mythology. This is our envy. Anything else?
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Who hasn't asked a question before? All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know if this is a speculation, but I was immediately thinking how we approach Krishna via Lord Chaitanya. Wouldn't it make sense to read Chaitanya Charitamrita before approaching Canto?
No. Bhagavad Gita is the undergraduate study, the acharyas tell us. Bhagavatam is the graduate study, and Chaitanya Charitamrita is the postgraduate study. Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually Bhagavatam because there's so many Bhagavatam verses in it. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna introduces you to him. He says, think of me, offer to me, surrender to me. But he doesn't talk much about that me. Who is me? He doesn't reveal so much about his identity. He shows the universal form, the Virat Roop, but that's not the original personality of Godhead. In Bhagavatam, Krishna describes more about himself, especially in the 10th canto. He reveals his name, form, qualities, and pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavatam, however, you will practically not find a reference to Srimati Radharani. She's there in a hidden way. One word related to her name. Why did Shukadeva Goswami do like that? First of all, the subject matter of Srimati Radharani is very confidential. Secondly, he knew, the acharyas say, that if he uttered Radha's name, he would lose himself in ecstasy and he wouldn't be able to speak Bhagavatam. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you find all about Radha Tattva, the science of Srimati Radharani, because that's the confidential mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to experience what Srimati Radharani experiences in her relationship with Krishna. Krishna wants to know, but he can't do that as Krishna. All right?
Thank you.
So let me read a little more about Rupa Goswami. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking. He's concluding, I have simply given a general survey describing the mellows of devotional service. You, Rupa Goswami, can consider how to adjust and expand this. Just see the responsibility conferred upon Rupa Goswami by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can adjust and expand this knowledge. When one thinks of Krishna constantly, love for him manifests within the heart. Even though one may be ignorant, one can reach the far shore of the ocean of transcendental love by Lord Krishna's mercy. So after saying this, Mahaprabhu embraces Rupa Goswami, and then Mahaprabhu decides to move on in his travels to Varanasi. So the next morning, Mahaprabhu rises early and prepares to leave for Varanasi, and Rupa Goswami submits a petition at Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet. If you give me permission, I shall go with your lordship. It is not possible for me to tolerate the waves of separation. So what is Mahaprabhu's response? You can't blame Rupa Goswami for making such a proposition. But Mahaprabhu says, your duty is to carry out my order. You have come near Vrindavan, now you should go there. Later, you can go from Vrindavan to Jagannath Puri, and you'll meet me there in Jagannath Puri. So Mahaprabhu has service for Rupa Goswami to do in Vrindavan, reviving the knowledge of Vrindavan's pastimes. So then what? After Mahaprabhu said that, he embraced Rupa Goswami again, got into a boat, and Rupa Goswami faints and falls down at the spot, overwhelmed by the impending separation. This is real love. How many of you, upon separation from someone dear to you, fainted and fell down on the spot? We don't know what the waves of transcendental separation are like. Rupa Goswami was feeling that. He wanted to go with Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu had service for Rupa Goswami to do. Most important service. And it's a service that we are all benefiting from now. So this is the background to Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada's summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. All right, now we'll open up for any general questions. Before we get to that, let me briefly explain that I wanted originally to talk about the 9 symptoms of bhava, ecstatic love, because the goal of the 5 angas, the special angas that we've been talking about, sadhu, sangha, nama, kirtan, so forth, the goal is to produce ecstatic love for Krishna. We're not impersonalists. It's not that our whole portfolio of knowledge and realization is simply, you're not the body. Get rid of all material desires. We are aiming for ecstatic love of Krishna. And so therefore, it's important for us to know the symptoms of ecstatic love. The 5 angas lead to ecstatic love, but what are the symptoms of that stage of bhava? That you'll find in chapter 18 of Nectar Devotion. The 9 symptoms are listed. And this is important because, especially in India, you can see persons who do these dramatic external displays of ecstasy. Maybe you've seen that during your visits to Vrindavan. I remember once I was at the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan, right before the deities, and someone walked in and immediately started rolling on the ground. You've ever seen something like that? Yes. And a person without knowledge will think, oh, this could be a highly advanced sadhu. But what you read in Nectar Devotion equips you with handling such demonstrations. It's not about the displays of what's called the Ashtasatvika, the 8 ecstatic bodily symptoms. Tears shooting from the eyes, trembling of the body. Someone can put on that kind of show. And also the reverse is true. Someone who is truly situated on the platform of bhava, ecstatic love, can conceal such symptoms. So you just don't know, except by looking at these 9 characteristics, which can't be hidden and can't be faked. Things like always being eager to use every second in Krishna's service. Indifferent to even the greatest material disturbances. You can't fake that. And nor can you suppress that. But the Ashtasatvika, the 8 ecstatic physical symptoms, an actor could fake it. You'll find them in Vrindavan today. We call them sahajiyas. They put on a cheap demonstration and foolish persons are bewildered. Oh, look, I saw this sadhu crying. That must mean the sadhu is situated on the platform of ecstatic love of Krishna. And then someone who's not showing those symptoms, those ecstatic symptoms, physical symptoms, may indeed be situated on the platform of ecstatic love, but conceals those physical symptoms. So, independent of the physical symptoms, Nectar Devotion gives you 9 characteristics of behavior that are impossible to suppress or to fake. So if we had another session, we would go into that. But for today, I felt inspired to make sure you have a personal understanding of Nectar Devotion's transmission so that you could grow attached to Lord Chaitanya speaking to Rupa Goswami. All right, general questions? Yes, you've been very patient, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. This is from the earlier part of the session. Can sadhu sangha be conceived or perceived through the other 2 limbs, Bhagavata Shravana or Nama Kirtana, or has it needs to be a person, a living entity, keeping in mind, especially the prajalpa that actually goes on after attending a class or after a kirtana. So this is more on the prajalpa aspect. So can the sadhu sangha be conceived through the other limbs of the 5 limbs you mentioned earlier?
Trying to specifically understand what you're getting at. Can you ask it another way? Is that possible?
I was just wondering, is sadhu sangha associated with or related to the other 2 angas, of the 5 angas you actually?
Of course, everything is related. You want to have Nama Kirtan with as many genuine sadhus as possible present. You want to have Bhagavat Shravan as much as possible hearing from a sadhu. So it's all related, but Rupa Goswami is, for the sake of your understanding, each of the angas, he's delineating them in a particular way, specifically. But if someone's a sadhu, what are they doing? Namakirtan, Bhagavat Shravan, Mathura Vasa, Sri Murtira. So it's all related. But just for the sake of our understanding, these delineations, these categorizations are made. As for what our aspiring devotees may do before and after the Bhagavat Shravan, well, what can I say? I'm happy that they were there for Bhagavat Shravan. A journey begins with but a single step. He hasn't asked a question before.
You spoke about a lot about sadhu sangha and importance of sadhu sangha. I wanted to know, like, how should one associate with sadhus? Like, some basic guidelines for it, or
I mentioned that in the very beginning. Who knows? Who remembers? Immediately, you take advantage of the presence of the sadhu to talk about Krishna, ask about Krishna, hear about Krishna. You seize the opportunity. You've ever seized something that you really wanted? Yes. So you have that kind of seizing attitude. You want to hear about Krishna. You want to talk about Krishna. That's your reciprocation with the presence of the sadhu. And in that way, guess what? You'll become a sadhu. It's possible. What will your relatives say? We sent him to Australia to make money and he's becoming a sadhu. We know as soon as his tongue says Hare Krishna, he turns into a brahmachari. Who hasn't asked a question?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Gurudev, I wanted to ask about Dham visit. How many times we should visit the Dham? And what should be our consciousness? Because many times when devotees speak among themselves, they raise this point saying that wherever Prabhupada went, wherever Prabhupada established the temples, these are the Dhams. So we don't need to go to Dham. So what exactly we should do? Should we go to Dham? And if we go to Dham, they also say that if we go there, I just want to do the service. I just don't want to be the visitor. So how exactly we should take these things?
If you have the opportunity to physically go to the holy Dham, Navadvip, Mayapur, Vrindavan, Jagannath Puri, you should take it. At the same time, it is also true that by your service in Sydney, if it's so dedicated, you can create the atmosphere of the Dham even here. But that takes quite some intensity. It's nothing to be taken cheaply. But it's not very difficult to go to the Dham from here. If you have the opportunity, you take it. And by your presence in the Dham, you're meant to increase your hearing and chanting. Going to the Dham is not simply for shopping. It's for an immersion in hearing and chanting about Krishna. So that should be your foremost concern. Your presence in the Holy Dham is not so much for the eyes, it's for the ears and the tongue. Ishpareshvara.
Hare Krishna very much. I was just wondering, I think you read something about Rupa Goswami that even though he had apparently disqualifications in his material life, that because of his service attitude, that he then got the mercy. So I was just wondering if that is like, because bhakti, as you explained, is causeless, independent of any material cause, but then it seems like those kind of people who serve faithfully some material master, are they more likely to take up bhakti than those who try to be a material boss?
Say the last two sentences again.
Like people who are in Maya in the way of serving.
People who are in Maya in the way of serving what?
Some material cause.
Yeah.
As servants.
Mm-hmm.
Are they more likely to take up bhakti than those who try to be controllers? Obviously, in one way or other, everyone tries to be controlled and ultimately servant.
Positions of power in the material world make your false ego expand. So often it can be harder for such persons to approach bhakti because they're used to dominating others. This is why Queen Kuti prays, Janmaishvaya Shruta Shivya Edamana Madakrama. Those who are bewildered by their aristocratic birth, their wealth, their learning, their beauty, they can't call out the holy name of Krishna with love. They're infatuated with their own sense of self-worth. If such persons, somehow or other, by the mercy of a devotee, would take to bhakti with their powerful position, they could do so much to spread Mahaprabhu's mission. Just like Maharaja Prataparudra. Lord Chaitanya wouldn't even see him at first. He wanted so much to get the darshan of Mahaprabhu. But as Mahaprabhu's followers told the king, Lord Chaitanya does not even see kings in dreams, what to speak of during the day. They tried. The associates of Mahaprabhu tried this way, that way, but Mahaprabhu refused. They told Mahaprabhu, the king is such a great devotee. And Lord Chaitanya said, that may be so, but there's one word attached to his name that ruins everything. King. But Prataparudra used his position to serve devotees, to make so many arrangements for Lord Chaitanya's devotees. So yes, it's true that someone with a lot of political or economic power is generally very puffed up, but somehow or other, if they can engage in service to Mahaprabhu's mission, they can accomplish a lot. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you mentioned that the 9 symptoms of love of God cannot be faked or concealed. Can you share any of the instances Prabhupada manifested these symptoms?
You're all the time, those 9 symptoms. Those are not physical systems. Those are not physical symptoms. But the Ashtasattvika, the 8 physical symptoms, can be faked or concealed. Yes, I have seen Srila Prabhupada break out into Ashtasattvika, the 8 physical symptoms, and then immediately stop his lecture and walk out of the room. Okay?
Thank you.
And he refused to talk about it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I have a question. So, can a particular mood turn into pride during a conversation between two devotees?
Of course. Anything in Kali Yuga can turn into pride.
Yes, so
I've got a new toothbrush, I'm so proud. Anything. That's a symptom of Kali Yuga.
So what are the things that we need to be aware of so that we realize that we don't cultivate pride during a conversation?
That if even Rupa Goswami considered himself wretched, what to speak of us? How we should consider ourselves. You can constantly ask yourself, why do I think I'm superior to this devotee? Why do I think that I'm so special? You ask yourself that question all the time. Got it?